Coming up, sweeps and blowouts highlight yesterday's action across the league. This is Locked On Game to Game, MLB.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game MLB. Local experts join us to recap all of the action for you from yesterday across Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Freddie Fermin hit the extra innings walk-off for the Royals, giving them a win over the Guardians despite Cleveland out-hitting Kansas City by more than double that. Locked On Guardians goes over why those hits didn't become more runs.
Well, I wish I could come on here and scream and yell about how amazing Jose Ramirez is, and he still is, and almost single-handedly won the Guardians the game on Thursday afternoon against the Royals, but the Guardians fell in extra innings 4-3 to the Kansas City Royals. I'm Justin Ladicos, Locked On Guardians. Jose Ramirez did have a straight steal of home in the 10th inning that gave the Guardians a chance to win the game, and it was legendary, ridiculous, and extremely, extremely daring, to say the least. Unfortunately, Emmanuel Clase gave a couple hits in the 9th inning. They had an infield hit allowed. Trevor Stephan allowed a run in the 8th inning, but kind of more the important part, the Guardians left 10 runners on base. They were thrown out at third twice. They got picked off at first base. A poor base running game for the Guardians, unable to capitalize runners on base. And Shane Bieber had a great start. The Guardians offense could not back him. The Guardians don't get the sweep of the Royals. They head to Chicago for a weekend series, and we're going to break all of that down and more for you on Locked On Guardians.
The Phillies finished off a sweep with the Cubs, winning their third game in the series on Thursday night. And our Locked On hosts for both teams go over a dominant 3-game stand for Philly.
There you have it. The Philadelphia Phillies take down the Chicago Cubs. Not a blowout by any stretch of the imagination, but Taijuan Walker was awesome last night. A couple defensive miscues behind him, and he just battled through. As good as Ranger Suarez has been this month, Taijuan Walker's been awesome as well. He's really earning his money in the month of June. Well, I guess he really has earned his money in the month of June since June's about to be over, but great work by him. Bryce Harper with a big at-bat. Kyle Schwarber, the leadoff homer on the first pitch of the game, and right at that point, you kind of felt like the sweep was in play. I mean, the sweep's in play when the Philadelphia Phillies walk on the field at this point. They're playing so well right now. This team is running hot, and if they can heat up heading into the All-Star break, got a couple of tough series with Tampa Bay and another team that's and the Marlins as well, who you're trying to chase down coming up. But this Phillies team is playing well right now. You love to see it. We'll talk about more on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.
Sweep at Wrigley Field, and not the good kind. The Cubs get swept, dominated by the Philadelphia Phillies in 27 innings in this series. The Cubs trailed in 25 of those innings. They did not lead the entire series. Tonight's game was the most frustrating. They had some opportunities, bunted a bunch that didn't work out, couldn't get a clutch hit. Some bad luck involved. I thought Kyle Hendricks was tremendous tonight, and one 85 hopper that snuck through up the middle by Bryce Harper was the difference in the game, and that came on the heels of an infield hit by Clemens that was really fortunate. And then Ian Happ, second and third one out, hits a line drive rocket right at the second baseman. Sometimes that's how it goes in baseball, and the Cubs are in a bit of a funk. So hopefully they can find a way to win on Friday at 1:20 against Cleveland.
The Pirates swept the Padres by coming back from an early 4-0 deficit in Pittsburgh on Thursday. Locked On Padres wasn't happy after his team loses again.
What's up, everybody? Javier Reyes here of the Locked On Padres podcast. Oh man, I mean this is gold. This is gold. The Padres on top of the Giants, on top of the who else did we lose? The Nationals, on top of all that losing that they've done. Then they go in and get swept by the Pittsburgh Pirates. I mean, it's. I don't have the Joker hat with me at the moment, but like this is genuinely hilarious. Like it's actually hilarious. 4-1 lead, you blow that. Trent Grisham, unlikely source of power. He hits a big home run from you. Then you don't do anything basically for the rest of the game. You don't put the nail down. You don't put the hammer down, whatever. You don't close things out. That's been the story of their offense, especially all year. And then Tim Hill has another throwing error who, I mean, don't look this up, please, but I think he has like 4 throwing errors in the last week. Am I crazy about that? But around that many, he's been bad. It's a clown show. It's a clown show. That's all it is. And honestly, it's getting to the point where It's just the only interesting thing to talk about for this team for the rest of this year, at least, is like, what do they do at the deadline? What do they trade away at the deadline? How do they become sellers? Because this is a disaster. It's a clown show. And my only recommendation to Padres fans is try to find a sick, twisted desire to laugh at all this, you know? Like, laugh at the ridiculousness of how bad they are. It's the only thing you can do at this point. That's where we're at.
Spencer Torkelson hit a pair of home runs to send the Rangers past the Tigers last night in Texas. Locked On Rangers has more after that loss.
In a spot start, Cody Bradford mostly did his job, but the Rangers bullpen fell short in an 8-5 loss to the Tigers, where the Texas Rangers split a 4-game series with Detroit. I'm Bryce Patrick, host of the Locked On Rangers podcast. This was a frustrating loss for the Rangers. They got Cody Bradford for 4 1/3 innings, starting in as a way to give this rotation an extra day's rest. It set it up better for the series against Houston. 4 1/3 innings, like I said, 3 runs. All of them were earned. 8 strikeouts, a career high for the youngster, not really known as a strikeout guy. They got home runs from Ezekiel Duran and Leody Taveras. The Rangers offense got a couple of runs back in the 9th inning, but the story of this game was John King giving up 4 runs in the 8th inning. It really kept the Rangers from getting a real chance to come back, but they did have the tying run on at the plate with Adolis Garcia in the bottom of the 9th inning, hit an absolute rocket off his bat, but of course right to Andy Ibanez to end this game, and a frustrating loss for the Texas Rangers.
Coming up, the Astros put up a football score on the Cardinals. This is Locked On Game to Game, MLB. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by Game Time. Buying last-minute tickets should not be difficult, and it should not be expensive. The Game Time guarantee has you covered. That means you will always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less elsewhere, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game MLB. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. The Yankees put up double digits on the Athletics for the second straight day, scoring 10 runs a day after Domingo Germán's perfect game. Locked On Yankees recaps another win.
Well, the perfect game was broken up in the first at-bat of the game, but the Yankees ended up winning anyway. I'm Stacey Gotsoulias, the host of Locked On Yankees, and the Yankees beat the Oakland A's 10-4 at the Coliseum to take 2 out of 3. Thank goodness, because if they hadn't, Yankee fans would have rioted. Clark Schmidt lasts 5 1/3 innings, gives up 3 runs. Didn't pitch bad, didn't pitch great, it was fine. But the big thing for Clark Schmidt, the offense scored for him. The Yankees had a 26-minute-long 6th inning in which they batted around and scored 8 runs, which helped them pull ahead and win the game. Some guys contributing. Very important. Josh Donaldson hits a 472-foot home run. Giancarlo Stanton hits an RBI double. There are a bunch of singles thrown in there. Every Yankee starter had a hit except for Jose Trevino, but he got on base. He was hit by a pitch. So we'll have everything you need to know about this game on the next Locked On Yankees, and it's Fan Mail Friday.
The White Sox scored 6 runs in the 3rd inning and split their 4-game series with the Angels in the process. The Locked On hosts with both of those teams have more after the final in Anaheim.
The Chicago White Sox beat the Los Angeles Angels on Thursday, 9-7. Hey, I'm Nick Morawski from Locked On White Sox. White Sox split the series with LA. Sox had 9 runs, 9 hits, 0 home runs. They had a huge 6-run 3rd inning. Lance Lynn struggled at the beginning of the game. 3 home runs through the first 3 innings, but he settled in. Lance Lynn ended up going 6 innings. Sox are now 11 games under 500, but only 4.5 games back in the AL Central. They'll stay out west, head to Oakland for a 3-game series starting on Friday. For more, check out the Locked On White Sox podcast.
The Angels split the series with the White Sox after they fall 9-7 on Thursday afternoon. What's going on, everybody? John Frisch, one half of Locked On Angels. Listen, let's play a game of shoulda, coulda, woulda. The Angels shoulda had Patrick Sandoval go past the 5th inning, but he pitched only to the 5th because he gave up a ton of runs. He coulda not giving up a sixth spot in the top of the third because he had tons of run support. He had a 4-1 lead because of Mickey Moniak, Hunter Renfroe, and Mike Moustakas delivering on 3 home runs, but then he gave up 6 in the top of the third. The Angels woulda had a tie game in the bottom of the ninth thanks to Shohei Ohtani and his record-breaking 14th home run in the month of June, but Jacob Webb hit Luis Robert. He stole 2 bags, came home. Andrew Vaughn tripled. He came home on a wild pitch, and so that put the game out of reach. It would have been 7-7 had Jacob Webb not given up those 2 runs. Poor pitching all around. We're going to talk about it on Locked On Angels. We hope you'll join us.
The Red Sox got swept by the Marlins after not putting up a run against Miami on Thursday night. Locked On Red Sox tries to diagnose what's wrong with this now last place Boston team.
There's not a whole lot to say really at this point. It's just the same thing over and over again every single night. Just same thing, different day. Scored 3 runs total in the series against the Marlins. Bayo pitched an absolute gem in this game. Went into the 8th inning, only gave up a couple hits. It's just not fair to him. It's really not fair that he has to deal with an offense that can't give him any run support. And something needs to be figured out. But this is just not good. I understand there are players injured, but it's not really an excuse at all. So we need to figure this out, and if that means sell people and just get good value in return, then at least that's a step. But make some kind of move now.
With the Reds being inactive on Thursday, the Brewers' win over the Mets put Milwaukee in a tie with Cincinnati for the lead in the NL Central. Locked On Brewers recaps the win and the tight race in the division.
How about that bullpen again getting the job done? Devin Williams gets out of a bases-loaded jam in the bottom of the 9th inning, and the Brewers take 3 of 4 in New York. They beat the Mets 3-2. Once again, the Brewers had to lean on that bullpen and a strong start out of Adrian Hauser, and they were able to get 1 run after Max Scherzer was out of the game. They did tie it. They were down 2-0. Victor Caratini hit a 2-run home run, even the game's up, and then later on, Ryan Anderson with a sac fly, and the Brewers go on and take the lead, and the bullpen does the rest. Payamps, how huge was he? Peguera, and of course, the great Devin Williams, the all-star for this year's team, got the job done once again. We'll talk about it coming up on Locked On Brewers a little bit later on. We'll get to this, and the Brewers make another roster move. All that next. I'm Chuck Freeman on Locked On Brewers on the Locked On Podcast Network. See you in a bit.
Well, the New York Mets did it. They went the entire month of June without winning a series, and they lost the final one to the Milwaukee Brewers 3-1. Brutal performance on Thursday night. This is Ryan Finkelstein, the host of Locked On Mets, and I will say Max Scherzer pitched well, and you got a pair of back-to-back homers from Brett Beatty and Brandon Nimmo. But that was all the offense the Mets could muster. Another day where the bats disappointed, and Scherzer gave up a 2-run homer himself that ended up tying up the game, and the bullpen coughed it up, and the Mets had multiple bases-loaded opportunities late, and Starling Marte failed to come through in each of them. On tomorrow's show, I'll be discussing Marte and how his disappointing season has really coincided with the Mets' struggles. I'll also preview what lies ahead as the Mets try to get things back on track, facing the San Francisco Giants and a couple of former Mets players this weekend.
The Astros showed no mercy against the Cardinals last night, winning their series with a 14-0 shutout. Locked On hosts with both sides have more after a lopsided final.
What a game. Viva our France. JP France with a 6th straight quality start. Those 7 scoreless. And look, who would come in and keep the scoreless innings going? Rafael Montero, that's right. But really, this game hinged on what the offense did. 6 in the second, 3 later on, and then 5 in the 8th. I mean, 14 runs. Wow, what a game. Alex Bregman, 3rd grand slam of the season, 7 for 8 with bases loaded this year, his 7th of his career, ties Carlos Lee and Jose Altuve for the all-time lead, and the hits just kept coming. Kyle Tucker hit a home run. Everybody got involved in the offense. The Astros won the series as they leave to go to Arlington to face the AL West leading Rangers. Stay tuned into Locked On Astros. We're your team every day. Go Stros.
Another rough start for Adam Wainwright as the Astros blow out the Cardinals in their series finale. Hey, it's JD from Locked On Cardinals, and after being within 6 outs of winning the series last night, The Cardinals get crushed 14-0 and end up losing 2 of 3 against Houston. Adam Wainwright continues to be a hot topic after getting shelled yet again, allowing 6 runs on 6 hits. He walks 3 in just an inning and 2/3. His ERA is now at a whopping 7.45 on the season. Is he doing more damage than good by taking the mound still? After the game, manager Ali Marmol insists that Waino will make his next start, and they'll continue to try and figure out what is going wrong with the future Cardinals Hall of Famer, because this is certainly not how the team or Wainwright envisioned his final season in the major leagues going. For the latest updates and info, be sure to keep it Locked On Cardinals.
That'll do it for this edition of Locked On Game to Game MLB. As always, we thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On MLB and your favorite team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.